Hello and welcome to National Park Wild. I'm Eric, and in national parks, one of the best ways to see it is going along a scenic drive. Whether it be by car, bus, bike, or on foot, there is so much you can see just from your car or from the road when you're in a national park. Obviously, it is preferred you do some hiking trails as well, but if you can only do scenic drives, I think these are the top 10 scenic drives in American national parks. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel so you know when new national park content comes out. I'll be going to my 63rd national park soon, so be on the lookout for videos about that. Let's jump right in. Number 10 is the Death Valley Scenic Byway at Canyonlands National Park. Just kidding, it's at Death Valley National Park. And this one is a wonderful road, and somewhat bizarre. The elevation changes on the road are pretty shocking. Parts really do feel like a roller coaster. And you will drive by some of the wonderful scenery there is to enjoy in the park. From the mesquite flat sand dunes and other dune fields, to the unique badlands, the canyons, the mountains, the flatter desert areas, and the salt flats, of course. There is so much diversity in the desert scenery to find on this road, and there's such a long road there that there's a lot to see. It's not one where you're going to stop for major wildlife as much, but it is definitely one of my favorite scenic drives, and I enjoyed it so much. The only thing is, I imagine it would be miserable to go in summer. Number 9 is the Maxwell Scenic Drive at Big Bend National Park. This one is similar to Death Valley in that it is long and in the desert. It would also be pretty miserable in the hot summer. But this one does have quite a bit to enjoy as well. And even more so, I would say. Roadside stops such as Tough Canyon, Mule Ears, and Sodal Vista are all stellar, and they're some of my favorite scenery in any canyon or desert national park. I think getting to Santa Elena Canyon is also wonderful, and there's simply so much to enjoy. Not to mention, I found there was much more wildlife, including coyotes and deer. Big Bend is the most underrated national park for me, and the scenic drive is definitely a part of that. Number 8 is Hurricane Ridge Road at Olympic National Park. There's a lot of great places to drive in the Pacific Northwest, but Hurricane Ridge Road is one I love for its mountainous areas. You are on Hurricane Ridge, so when you look out in multiple directions, you can see the beautiful mountains of Olympic National Park. They're massive, colorful, and some of my favorites in the US. The rest of Olympic is also a wonderful place, but for me, the abundance of wildlife on this road is also a nice standout. Elk are the primary thing you would see, and of course the mountain scenery is something special. Even if this is not the most major, long, insane road of them all, it's one that's hard not to enjoy. Number 7 is Yosemite Valley Road at Yosemite National Park. This one is tough, because there's a lot of roads to enjoy in Yosemite. Tioga, Wawona, there's a lot that I could have chosen. I went with this one because it is the primary one in the park to enjoy the most iconic scenery. And yes, that means most popular, most touristy as well, but there's a reason it is. The valley is stunning. You have El Capitan, Half Dome, Bridal Veil Falls, Yosemite Falls, and being able to drive and see most of this, wonderful. Not to mention, I've seen coyotes both times I've gone on this main area, from what I can remember at least. And I just think, even though there are other roads that might technically be better for scenic drives as opposed to going from stop to stop for hikes, this might be the one that I highly recommend you do and make it a top priority if you can only go to one area in the park. Not to mention, Tunnel View is not far from this one, as it's basically the starting point of the beautiful Yosemite Valley Road. Number 6 is General's Highway in both Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. This beautiful road in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California spans 2 different parks, and it stands out because, similar to some of the other mountainous roads in the parks, you are along the edge of mountains, and everywhere you look, you will see all sorts of shapes, colors, and sizes of these absolutely stellar rock formations. Going all the way through Sequoia on this one is pretty special, and I think it has some of my favorite mountains I've ever seen to date. It's one of my favorites, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint the exact reason, but while there's so much to enjoy in these parks, the hiking and all of that, I think this scenic drive is among the best things to enjoy in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. Though do definitely, in Kings Canyon, go into the canyon as well. That's off General's Highway, but General's Highway also should not be missed. Number 5 is Trail Ridge Road in Rocky Mountain National Park. Another wonderful mountain road. This one has glorious vistas. The Rocky Mountains, of course, are beautiful, and here you'll see alpine lakes and massive snowy cliffs. I think the main thing that stands out for me on this one, though, is elevation, because this one actually gets insanely high up, well over 10,000 feet, and while there are plenty of others that are pretty high up, this one you can really feel that height looking down more than the majority of other mountain roads. That's a major feature for me. I love that sort of perspective. Not to mention, though I've talked wildlife a little bit on other ones, this one is the best of any I've mentioned so far. Elk, bighorn sheep, moose, you name it. There's quite a bit of wildlife here. And of course, Rocky Mountain National Park, you get access to some great trails right from off this one, but that doesn't take away from the fact that just driving along this one is an attraction in and of itself. Number 4 is Grand Loop Road at Yellowstone National Park. This one I was considering just putting the main northeast entrance road or Lamar Valley, but Grand Loop Road has so much to offer. Obviously, Lamar Valley is my favorite wildlife place, probably anywhere, but Hayden Valley is also wonderful, and it's on the Grand Loop Road. Grand Loop Road is the majority of Yellowstone, so being able to drive by the geyser basins, the mountains, the plains, the waterfalls, the forests, there is a ton to see. And of course, because Yellowstone, it's easy to see something such as a bison, or even bears and elk and pronghorn and bighorn sheep and all of that in a pretty casual drive-through. There's so much you can see in Yellowstone without getting out of your car, and while I think it's best experience with getting out of your car, the experiences in your car will be memorable. If you're in a bison jam, some might not enjoy that, but that defining feature of Yellowstone for me is a blast, and I definitely think it's one of my favorite places to drive around, so it had to make the list. Number 3 is Zion Canyon Scenic Drive in Zion National Park. This one's only flaw is that you cannot drive it. You can enter the park by car, but for the main scenic drive, the majority of it has to be taken by bus, bike, or foot. However, I think it's worth it. Being in this narrow canyon, looking up at some of the most wonderful desert features in the world, I think being able to experience that alone earned us a top 3 spot. The waterfall Temple of Sinawava, looking up to Angel's Landing, headed to the Narrows at Riverside Walk area. It's a beautiful road to be on. And while it's short and shuttle bus and all that, I get that those are kind of complaints, but I can't fault this one. It's one of the most beautiful. And for quite a while, I think this could have been my favorite. This could be the one I think is the most beautiful scenic drive, most scenic if you will, and therefore really fit the bill for a high spot on the list. Number 2 is going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park. This is probably most people's number 1, and I can't blame them. This is a phenomenal place to drive. Being high up just like with General's Highway or Trail Ridge Road, but with even more impressive mountains. With the lush greenery at the bases, and then the jagged peaks, and the grays and whites, and when you have the bright sun, the colors just pop. And it's a photographer's dream. There are waterfalls right along the road, such as the Weeping Wall. You're very likely to experience Rocky Mountain level wildlife. And biking is definitely a magical experience here. I thoroughly enjoy going to the Sun Road, and there's a reason why many just do a drive through this park and still feel fulfilled. The drive is just that good. And it's absolutely one of the best things about Glacier National Park, because it does give access to pretty much every great hike at all, but still being able to do a drive-through makes this scenic drive one of the best. But it's not my personal favorite. Number 1 is Denali Park Road in Denali National Park. This one, I will admit, is primarily for the fact that the scenery is my favorite. I absolutely love the mountain itself. Denali is probably my favorite thing I've ever seen in nature. It's just so grand and something unlike any other mountain I've ever seen. So prominent, its own thing. It's beautiful. And then of course you have, possibly more than any other on this particular road, amazing wildlife. The big 5: dull sheep, grizzly bear, moose, caribou, wolf. You are likely to see at least 3 of these on a drive-through. And there's also plenty of other smaller animals, willow ptarmigans, eagles, red foxes. I stopped several times on my shuttle bus I was with, seeing wildlife. And yes, I should point out, this one is similar to Zion in that you have to take a shuttle or bike most of it. Now, this is worth it for me, because getting to the mountain is spectacular and an unforgettable once-in-a-lifetime experience, especially if you catch on a clear day. And since I have experienced this drive on a clear day, I'll say it is my favorite scenic drive in any national park. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below your favorite scenic drives, even not just in national parks. And subscribe for more national park content. I'll see you next time.